Is there a point in installing antivirus on Ubuntu? I have recently started using Ubuntu. I am wondering about the point of installing antivirus programs on Ubuntu. On SuperUser, I found the opinion that it only detects Windows viruses and removes them. Is there a point in installing antivirus if I don't have any other OS? As far as I know, there are no viruses for Linux. What about malware and any other harmful programs? Is it safe not to install any protecting software?
This is simply not true. There are many types of malicious code which can be run on Linux. The point is, and the misunderstanding, is that there is significantly less when compared to Windows. For whatever reason, it's become commonplace to use AV on Windows. This URL. There are a few AV programs for Linux. There is also more information on SuperUser. The rest of my answer is copied from the answer of that post. Well, it factually is not, it's just less subject to hackers developing viruses that target Linux systems. Consumer-grade computers usually run on Windows, and thus, when targeting a wide audience, Windows is the way to go. Don't misunderstand Linux and viruses. There definitely are Linux viruses. Some distros have additional protection layers such as Linux in Ubuntu, for example. Then there's the default firewall and the fact that alien files don't automatically have permission to be executed. Specific execution permission has to be granted before execution is possible. Then there are several other factors that make Linux a hard place to be for viruses. Usually non-root users on Linux systems have no to little executable files at their disposal that would allow for viruses to stay undetected and propagate. Some programs just require you to be logged in as root, or by use of sudo, before they run, or to access modify directories other than your home. It's just a lot harder to develop a viable virus that would spread as good as it would in Windows. Update. As mentioned below, most machines that run Linux are either servers that are run by people who know a thing or two about what they're doing. People that run Linux for desktop use usually choose to, and also do know what they're doing. Almost all computer illiterate run Windows, and therefore it's much easier to get those computers infected. Hey, this machine tells me that I have a virus, and I have to purchase this antivirus program called Trojan Hunter to get rid of it. Okay, let's do it, because no Linux distribution installation is equal per se. It's harder to develop malware that would infect them all as efficient as possible. Furthermore, almost all software run on Linux is open source, making malware much more easily detectable since its source is open to the public.
First, ask why is Ubuntu Linux more secure? As it is mostly, unless you install non-free, free software, Software Libre, the source code is available. Freedom 1, the freedom to study how the program works, making it harder to hide malicious code. The huge repositories and the installer make it, mostly, unnecessary to install arbitrary software. The system is better architected, designed to be secure. If a virus is written that exploits a vulnerability, then fix the vulnerability, versus blame the virus and detect when it gets onto the system. Files are not executable by default, no matter what their name or extension. Diversity, different distributions, address randomization in kernel to make bug exploits more difficult, etc. In addition, you should back up regularly. You can use the multi-user feature, even if it is just you using the system. Have a sandbox user for testing new software. Set up Subversion or Mercurial, or if you are good at using stuff that is hard to use, Git, a revision control system, so when you break something you can roll it back. Then have the repository owned by a user SVN, with no write permission to anyone else. Then use tunneling SSH to connect. That way, if your account is compromised, the intruder can break things, but the old state will be in the repository, and cannot be deleted. Look into configuration management, e.g. Kvengen, Puppet, Chef, or perhaps the fairly new Ansible. Note, GNU/Linux is not perfect, there are many problems. There is currently research into new ways to improve security. But it is still better than the rest, possible exception of some of the BSDS.
Yes, there is. Imagine that you have a file with a Windows-only virus as part of the payload and it passes through your Linux machine. You have the opportunity to remove it before it is sent with email or on a USB stick to a friend. If this happens, the virus is now on his Windows machine.
Linux viruses are obviously more rare and have more difficulty penetrating to a level where they can really do damage, but they exist. With Linux systems, I worry a lot more about penetration/attacks. When I ran an SSH server on the normal SSH port, I'd see hundreds of login attempts a day from China, mostly random account/password combinations, but it made me nervous enough to move the port higher. I think you'd get much more benefit from a system like Tripwire than from a Windows-style antivirus. I believe Tripwire scans your logs for particular patterns, watches for elevated privileges and permission changes on files.
It was 49, diesem zu leiden, schreiben.